Oh, yay. All right, I'm just getting acquainted here with my mouse and my zoomy zoom. We'll wait just a couple minutes. So happy to see all of you. Welcome. Getting yourself settled, get what you need um, to feel good for this next bit here, whether that's something to drink or different seating arrangement. All right. Great. Welcome, everybody. My name's Fannie Hungerford. So happy to be here tonight and be a part of this year's Tend Hope edition. And, I was thinking back actually when Betsy and I were first talking about this year's events, and I think right away I was drawn to bring in something about polyvagal theory. And so I'm so glad this opportunity came with the Glimmer events that are happening this month in association with this event. The same woman I learned about polyvagal theory is who coined the term glimmer. All right, Deb Dana is her name. And I actually was in a workshop with her a year and a half or so ago, and she was so cute because she was like, you never know, when something of your research is going to catch on. Like, I coined this term, I came up with this term glimmer as the opposite of a trigger. She at that point was like a decade ago, and now all of a sudden in 2023, right, it's everywhere and it's on social media and it's like having a burst. So she was speaking to that, right, which glimmers being those spaces and places, moments in our day where we find ourselves in a felt embodied sense of safety in connection. And that will be a big theme of our work tonight, is like when are we there, or what allows us to be there, and that what you'll learn today is as this ventral vagal state. So before I dive much more into content, I want everyone right now, kind of, since we're not all in a kind of IRL real space together, but we're in this like live container together, and then some of you will be watching the recording on your own at another space and time. I just want to invite us all right now in the space in which you occupy to just start to look around, right? Notice kind of your position on whatever chair you're in, what you want to rearrange. And I invite you to just start to notice, right? I'm not in my space, right? I'm in Betsy's office. So I'm going to look around here. But essentially, it's an opportunity for you right now. I want you to soften gaze and even kind of soften effort enough so that you can find and locate something in this space, all right? Or it might be outside if you can see outside a window that invites you into a sense of anchoring, a sense of safety, a sense of, that feels okay for me, right? So it may be something like unusual and kind of dreamy, or it may be something really predictable that you always look at and like that's on an altar in your space. So just take a moment and kind of settle in. And once you see that thing, all right, and if you're not in, I'm in a space with a lot of inspiring things, all right, if you're not in a space that has that, it requires a little creativity, right? So just note, like, where might I find that? Is it my hands on my lap? Is it how my feet are touching the floor? Okay, so it might not be a physical object outside of you, but it might actually be kind of something in your own state, right? Like if I put my hands on my lap, oh, my body exhales. Okay. So then once you have your thing, all right, your anchoring object, your anchoring action, your anchoring piece, just take about 30 seconds to be with it. Okay. And this is like a give and take, right? Like I see it or I feel it, and then I notice how I respond. All right. I give into that and I receive. Okay. So just this back and forth, either with vision or with felt somatic sense. Good. So tonight I invite that, whatever your anchoring object or your piece is, to be a support, right? An ally for you. So that as we like go on this little journey together, you've got something you can hook into to either reground or reconnect or remember that which supports you. Okay. It's not my intention that anyone feels worse during this session, but just of the nature of the things we'll be discussing and exploring, it may pull something up, right? So it feels important that you have something that feels like an anchor or an ally that you can utilize. Okay. So now that we have that, that's yours. I'm not going to remind you about it. We might come back to it like one more time, but that's yours to like play with, all right? And just note. So as we talk about the nervous system, I feel like the nervous system is getting a heyday, kind of like glimmers. Okay. Like people are talking about the nervous system. And it's so cool to me to see something that I've been curious about for so long, really coming into like the mainstream culture. And we hear a lot about regulation, right? Like getting regulated. And one of the things I want to do tonight is like bust the myth of being in like a constant state of regulation, like that I'm always peaceful, I'm always at ease. Okay, this is not normal. We are human beings having biological and emotional experiences all the time. And it's just not anything we should expect of ourselves or each other. Okay, so we move between states. And so the signs of a healthy nervous system or a healthy like way to perceive, is my nervous system doing me right, is like, can I fluctuate between states easily, right? Can I like have a certain facile way of being like able to get myself in and out, right? We even think of like conflict and life. Conflict is part of life, and it's not so much expecting a conflict-free life, but can we repair after conflict? Okay, so just wanting to lay that out because we'll talk a lot about the ventral vagal state, this space of being able to connect, this space where I feel secure. And I think we naturally have a tendency to desire that more. And there's even like a hierarchical way we're going to talk about it on a ladder. And so that then places it in this like, oh, I should always be there. Um, that's one of our homes, but so are these other spaces. All right. So the nervous system. We have this autonomic nervous system. Most of us think about parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, right? And that's really what I grew up, or maybe not growing up, but like in my adult life, as I started to study this, especially deeper into like yoga and yoga psychology, those are the two main. And then I get exposed to polyvagal theory, and all of a sudden there's more, right? But it's still working in the autonomic nervous system. Parasympathetic, what we think of as rest and digest, and sympathetic, what we think of as that fight or flight. And in the polyvagal theory, parasympathetic kind of branches out into two different two different branches, right? And this is that vagal, polyvagal, and this is the vagus nerve, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as parasympathetic branches into two, we now have the ventral vagal, all right? Ventral is VENTRAL, ventral vagal, VAGAL. Ventral vagal is one branch of parasympathetic, and the other branch is dorsal vagal, right? DORSAL, dorsal, like the bottom, all right? Dorsal vagal. And so now we know, all right, we've got this, like, here's our autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, and parasympathetic has two more branches, okay? Or two branches within it. The dorsal vagal is the oldest aspect of our nervous system, okay? Like in our evolution, this is the beginning. This is like immobilization, okay? I think a great image is the tortoise and draws into the shell, not moving. No one can see me. I'm isolated, I'm hiding, I freeze. Okay, so this aspect of the nervous system is the most ancient, right? And that's what kind of gives this like this hierarchy or these building blocks, because this was an evolution of our nervous system. And we as humans did not abandon one aspect of the nervous system. We actually just kept evolving and adding to. So we now still have all of these aspects of our nervous system. So that dorsal vagal is the most ancient. This is like immobilization. It is that is like the freeze response, the tortoise. All right, next in our evolutionary, like a million years later, okay, we develop sympathetic response. And that sympathetic response is now what allows me to escape the predator. Okay, like I can get out of here, fight or flight. And so that's a new adaptation that now in this phase of evolution we need. Okay. And then the third one is now another aspect of our parasympathetic nervous system is that ventral vagal. And that third building block is this space of safety and connection that allows me to reach out and when relaxed, not retreat and like freeze, but actually move into connection with someone, ask for help, collaborate. Like I feel safe and at home. And now with that safety and sense of security, I can move out in the world in different ways. All right. So that evolution, I think, is interesting, right? For us to consider or recognize that we have like these sort of multitudes. And you hear now, I think, a lot about like they were just in lizard brain, right? And like that's where they were responding from. And yeah, that lizard brain is maybe even above, that response that I think a lot of people call lizard brain is maybe even not that. It's like lower. So we want to think about, I just saw one chat. I'm really not gonna be able to look at chat, but I'll say it again since I'm not a visual, I don't have any visual aids. So yeah, I'll repeat. Okay, so it starts with the bottom is that first evolution is dorsal vagal. This is I'm immobilized and I'm not going to take action like the tortoise. Second one is now sympathetic response, fight or flight comes into play. Okay, and then the next evolution of our nervous system is the ventral vagal. So now at this point we have all three. Okay, immobilize, fight or flight, connect. All right. And that's what we're going to explore today is kind of how and when those three aspects of our nervous system appear in our lives, right? Because while we all have this sort of blueprint in this same system, it shows up differently for all of us. So we'll just talk a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of them so that you have a little better understanding of that in your life. And then we'll kind of explore, we'll go into an exercise in which I prompt you to identify more about that within your body and within your life. So let's start with that dorsal vagal, and Deb Dana sometimes gives it the name of dorsal despair. Okay, so the dorsal vagal is that response that usually comes out after taking action didn't work. Okay, so it's kind of a secondary response to stress. Okay, the primary response to stress is usually to take action, right? It's sympathetic. We we feel that there's stress and we either want to do something, we want to react, or we want to escape. All right, we need to like flee the area. Okay, so that happens first. And then when that doesn't work, then we go to collapse, all right? Then we go into that dorsal state. And that might be giving up, right? I'm not present anymore. A lot of that, like, I don't know, I don't care, lacking hope for sure, all right? Isolating, um, and this sense of I tried to take action, but my actions didn't work. And so now I'm trapped or I'm giving up, right? And I shut down. Okay, so those are kind of like bigger examples or more extreme examples of that dorsal vagal. When the dorsal vagal is like not in dysregulation, all it's doing is helping us poop. Okay, it's helping us digest and integrate our nutrients. Okay, so the dorsal vagal system is not all shut down. All right, it's not all immobilization. When we're not in a reactive state or dysregulated state, dorsal vagal is there helping my digestion move. Okay, so that's like the practical, like regulated state of dorsal vagal. All right. That sympathetic state, right, which is the fight or flight. This is what we think of as like real dysregulation, okay? That sense of this burst of activity, a burst of adrenaline, like this comes into play, like you are about to step out into the street and someone comes and you've got to readjust, or like you know, have a near crash experience in your car, something you're about to fall, or something is falling, and this burst of adrenaline comes in to like rescue the moment. Okay, when out of when dysregulated, all right, and more as a threat to danger, this is when I'm misreading cues. Okay, me as a human, us as human beings, I start to misread people's visual cues, people's tone of voice, right? Like something that may not be a threat, but because my state is dysregulated, I am threatened by it. I'm hyper vigilant. I'm desperate to get away, right? So sometimes it can look a little bit like shutdown. So I think this is where some nuances, like that tendency where energetically inside I feel really activated, but I'm a little bit stuck, right? But I haven't quite given up. Okay, so I think there's like this, sometimes even in my own mind and practice, I kind of get that level of activation a little confused, but just know that it's more that desire to flee rather than collapse. Okay, this is where we're probably going to argue. We're going to pick a fight. Okay, not be able to rationalize or like collaborate in communication. So important for us to understand, I gave those in like the kind of chronological order of our nervous system and evolution. But in the moment of stress, it's actually the flip. Okay. In the moment of stress or in the moment of threat, our first response is pretty much always a sympathetic response. And it's when the sympathetic fight or flight doesn't work that then dorsal vagal kicks in, and now I'm immobilized and now I'm giving up, right? So, and that doesn't always happen, but we always kind of start with mobilization. We start with protecting through taking action. And then the secondary response is immobilization, and I protect through disconnection. Okay. So sympathetic, I'm taking action. Dorsal vagal, I'm disconnecting. Okay, and I think that's an important distinction. At any moment, right, throughout our days, there is something coming in. right? There's input all the time these days, right? So something's coming in, there's an intervening variable into my life, into my mind, into my body. My nervous system is going to have a response, an autonomic response to that input. And then the output is determined by what the input is, what my state is, and then it's essentially, am I protecting or am I connecting? Do I need to protect? Can I connect? Because we are always checking, looking, searching for, is it safe? All right. Is it safe to connect? Is it not safe? Right. And for different reasons, different people, different experiences, the capacity to connect and the capacity to protect are different. We all have different ratios of those. All right. Or our tendency, I don't want to say capacity, proclivity to connection versus protection. Okay, and then this late blooming nervous system quality, the ventral vagal, all right, this we could think of as like our capacity to integrate, this ventral vagal part of our nervous system. This is when I can connect, when I feel a sense of security, when I feel a sense of safety, and I'm aware and alert, right? But I'm not hyper vigilant, right? So even in this state, a challenge comes in and I can meet the challenge by asking for help, collaborating, engaging in problem solving, right? Um, I can communicate clearly. I can reflect when the challenge arises. So a sense of safety, a sense of connection. I really think of this one as when that human need to reach out to another human to ask for help or offer help is available for us to access. Okay, like that I really sense as part of this ventral vagal. Can I reach out? And we all know the moments when either we're reluctant to reach out, there's too much shame to reach out, um, or we're too dysregulated and any reach out is actually ineffective or pushes people away. Okay. So I just want to give you a little bit of, we're going to be mapping this through a few different spaces and places, but I want to just like literally show you kind of where in your body these things are happening. Okay. All right. So the polyvagal, that vagal is referring to the vagus nerve, which is actually not just one nerve. All right. It's many. But if you want, you could put your hand on the, or you could just watch for a minute and then do it, but or you put your hand on the kind of like base of the skull, really like the brain stem, right? So you would have one hand there, and then your other hand can come toward your heart. So that parasympathetic state that branches into two, right? Ventral vagal and dorsal vagal. Ventral vagal is from the brainstem, essentially to the heart or above the diaphragm, okay? So you could just kind of feel into that. This is ventral vagal. This is that nerve plexus, that nerve pathway, right? Let's think of it as a pathway that travels from the brainstem to the area around and below the heart, but not past the diaphragm, that governs my sense of safety, my sense of connection, my capacity to ask for help or reach out. And I want you for a moment just to sense if you've got your hands there, or just imagine and remember that this is a literal pathway in your body. Okay. And information goes down and it goes up, and it goes down and it goes up. Okay. I like to switch my hands now. All right. So now I'm going to have my other hand on my brainstem and the other hand down on the belly. Okay. So this is for our dorsal vagal. All right. This other part of parasympathetic, right? So the dorsal vagal starts at the brainstem, but now is moving below the diaphragm. So again, remember I said about pooping, all right? Our digestion. So this is what governs our digestion. This is what allows us to eliminate, all right? What allows us to digest well. All right, many of us know when digestion is not well, something else is often not well. So let's just feel into that, all right? This pathway in our body, kind of from the brainstem to this lower space in the belly. And even just feeling some gratitude for that which allows you to digest. And also, let's not just give it a bad rap, that which protects you when you need to be protected. Okay? Because this would not have carried the system with us for this long if it wasn't in some ways adaptive and helpful, right? So thank you for protecting me. Thank you for helping me protect myself in moments when action couldn't be taken. All right, so again, this pathway going down and this pathway going up. An important key, all right, that is so easy for us to forget is for this, 80% of the information is going from down here to up here, and only 20% is going from our brain back down to the body. Okay, so 80% of the information that's traveling these pathways is coming from the body to the brain, 20% from the brain to the body. Okay, so this is why our tools for knowing what's going on in our body are learning to befriend the nervous system, learning to befriend signals from our body is so important, right? Because so much of the information that is happening in our bodies on a daily basis is coming this way, right? And yet our minds have become so dominant in the narrative, right? And we won't spend a lot of time kind of exploring it or sensing it, but just so you have a roadmap in your body, kind of sympathetic, all right, is a different set of, it's in the spinal region, right? It's not through this polyvagal, it's not the vagus nerve. Sympathetic is another set of nerves in the spine, and really kind of in this space between like lumbar, lower spine, and thoracic, right? So it's kind of hard to like map it, but you could just sense this space, all right, now like think of the adrenal glands, right? Our kidneys, those stress hormones, that's sympathetic space in the body. All right, or where those nerves are most concentrated. Okay. All right. I'm gonna look over at my anchoring plant, all right, for a moment. Just have a little reconnect. Okay. So let's move into some of this personal exploration, okay? So what we'll do for this is you're going to take a blank sheet of paper, all right, and either vertical or horizontal, divide it into thirds, all right? So you might just like add 2 lines here or 2 lines here, right? So blank sheet of paper, or blank page in your journal, and you want it to have 3 sections, all right? Bam, bam. Okay. And then we'll label those sections on the far left of your page. All right. Let's just label each, right? And we're going to go in that kind of ladder order through evolution, that bottom quadrant, or not quadrant, that bottom third is the dorsal vagal. That's where we're going to do exploration. Kind of that collapsed space, dorsal despair, as Deb Dana says. The middle section will be your sympathetic, fight or flight. And then that top third is where we'll explore ventral vagal. Okay, so ventral vagal at the top, sympathetic system in the middle, and the dorsal vagal at the bottom. All right, so just give everybody a bit to set that up. Getting hot. All right, one of the things I want to name before we dive into this is that there are like kind of everyday experiences in which we land in all three, right? That are not like necessarily threats to our safety. Okay, there are moments in our day where we feel that collapse, feel despair. There are moments in our day where we have to react quickly, right, to a impulse, right, an something input. And there are moments in our day where we feel even a small dose of that capacity to connect, that sense of safety. For you right now, as we do this exercise, I would encourage you to kind of like go a little further than those everyday moments. All right. So that we can get a little more of the flavor of this response in our bodies. Okay. But I'm not by any means asking you to dip into the deepest, darkest spaces of your life. Okay. We're here for like 27 more minutes. Okay. We're on a Zoom call. So, just go tread gently and only for you what's the space between that, right? Because we will do some recall, right? So you can feel something in your body. But I just want you to be mindful that you're not like going to the most intense spaces. All right. Some of that may come up. Right. And again, you're going to find your anchoring object. You're maybe going to take a break. Be like, I'll come back to this class another time. Okay. Like you don't have to keep doing it. Should have said that at the beginning, right? That's always a disclaimer. Do what feels good. Okay. All right. So we're going to go this time in order of sympathetic. We'll do that middle section first, and then we'll do dorsal, and then we'll end in ventral vagal. And what I'm going to be doing here is inviting you to kind of recall an experience or a time or just that feeling in your body. You might not even have to have a specific instance. And we'll explore everything from like thoughts, beliefs, somatic sensations, posture, um, actions or behaviors we take when we feel this way, right? So we're going to kind of do an inventory of all of that for each of these states, as well as like a color or a shape. And we'll, for every state, fill in the blank. When I am in this state, I am blank. So my beliefs about myself are blank. And when I'm in this state, the world is blank. So my belief about others or the world or my environment, right? Just so we can kind of see how our mind operates both in self-dialogue and how we perceive others. Okay. So starting in the sympathetic space, right? The sympathetic response, fight or flight. So it might be helpful to close your eyes or turn away from the screen a little bit, just so you can have a little of your own inquiry space. And I invite you to kind of sense into times, spaces, that feeling of intensity in which you felt dysregulated, you felt activated, maybe feelings of anger or a need to escape, that burst of adrenaline, a threat to safety in which fight or flight kicks in. And so just lean into that and notice if you can, does something shift in your posture, right? And you might even invite it to shift, like let the posture kind of mirror or expand into that state, into that feeling. And just note, is there a color, an image that accompanies this? All right, this feeling, this state, is there a color, an image, a sense of hypervigilance, desperation? And notice what other somatic sensations are present for you. Right? What are the literal body sensations? And you might notice some feelings also accompanying this moment. And at any point, you can jot a few of these down in that space. All right. At any point, you could jot down a color, some of the somatic sensations, what the posture was like, or an image. And I invite you to really sense into the feelings too. Maybe confusion, anxiety. And notice the thoughts that arise. Notice the thoughts. Again, maybe writing down kind of any somatic, postural feeling, felt sense in your body, colors or images, feelings, thoughts. And also ask yourself, what is it that I do when I'm in this state? What are the actions that I resort to or that kick in, right? Yelling, trying to control. Those are mine. I don't know what yours are. And remember, this is also that urge to escape, right? That urge to get out of there, right? When under stress or threat. But and then the last thing I kind of might invite you to do, kind of put this over in the far right of the page, or wherever in that section for sympathetic. But my beliefs about myself. So when I feel like this, when I'm in this state, I am what? How do I perceive myself? I am blank. And the world is blank. How do I perceive the world? So I'll just give you another half minute or so to kind of add any other details to this section of your page, your personal personal record map. Okay, and then a little something, right? I see someone like moving, hugging, I'm doing a little sway. Let's just do, a little something to like move that one out, right? Might be a clearing breath, might be looking at your grounding, rooting object or that your action, right? Just a little shimmy, shake, exhale. We're going to spend less time in the dorsal vagal, right? We'll just we want to dip our toes in this one, in part because this of the three states is the hardest to change, right? And kind of takes the most effort to get out of. So I don't want anyone like tonight to kind of get that and that you're kind of immobilized. So we're just going to dip a toe into dorsal and not spend quite as much time, but do the same exploration. So this one will just be move a little quicker. Okay. All right, so again, you might want to turn away from the screen. You might want to close your eyes. You might want to kind of reorient, and you're going to just kind of recall a moment when taking action or engaging did not resolve something, right? And maybe you started to shut down. You feel not present or isolated, kind of numbed out, escaping. And again, I want you to maybe lean into that posture if anything kind of shifts in the body. It doesn't have to, you don't have to go all the way there, right? Just kind of slumping in the shoulders. If there's a color or an image that shows up, what are the somatic sensations in the body? What feelings do you have? And what thoughts and beliefs show up? And when I'm in dorsal despair, when I'm in collapse, what are the actions I engage in? What are the behaviors? And just make note of that or consider it.
Yes, I know. And I'm like, and
And then when I feel like this, right, when I'm in this dorsal despair, when I'm in a collapse state, I am blank. What do I believe about myself? And the world is blank. Okay. All right. So let's kind of, again, a little shimmy, shake, a sip of water. Look at your object. Let your soft focus come in. And so we can transition. All right, this last one. All right, now we're going to explore ventral vagal, this space of safety. Okay. All right, so again, it might be nice to close the eyes or turn away from the screen. All right, don't feel like you need to kind of stay glued to the computer or the screen. And now I want you to call in that feeling that you have when you feel safe, when you feel a sense of integration, you feel the capacity to connect. Curiosity is a key part of this state, right? I'm curious. I can connect. I can reach out to my fellow humans. I'm aware. I'm alert, right? So just let that come into the field of your attention, come into the body, and notice kind of what happens to your posture. Notice what happens on the sensation level. And first, let's just see like, oh, is there a color that I associate with the ventral vagal, with this feeling of safety? Is there an image? Notice kind of the feelings in the body. Notice what your body tells you when you're in this state and what feelings accompany this state. Right? This is when I can communicate well, I can reflect. right? This is when we can collaborate. So notice thoughts too. What are the thoughts that accompany this state? How does my mind operate in this state? And what are the activities, the things that I do, the things that, the behaviors I engage in that are more accessible or pleasurable in this state? Jotting any of that down if you haven't already. Noting any of those colors, shapes, images, somatic sensations, posture, beliefs, thoughts, actions, behaviors. And then that final question, when I feel like this, when I'm in ventral vagal, when I'm anchored there, I am blank and the world is blank. Okay, again, maybe just a little shimmy, a shake. All right, sip of water, something to kind of let go of that exploration. And the last thing I invite you to do on your map is now maybe over on the left side or maybe over on the far right side, kind of wherever you want to do it, or in the middle. You're going to give each of these states your own name. Okay, like what is the word or phrase that defines it or represents it for you, right? So that it's not just dorsal vagal, sympathetic, but just simplify it for yourself, right? What's the word or phrase for you for each of these states? Yeah, I'm just adding into the chat mine, all right, for this exercise. Right, lost, fear, and love. Right, that's what I titled mine. Right, you can title them whatever you want. Right, lost, fear, love. Okay. So we don't have a ton of time. And I did want to maybe just create space since we are on like a, maybe a little space for feedback or a question or something. But I just want to explain now what. Okay, like what do you do with this? All right. And part of it is just now exploring and knowing or having a place to land. Like, where am I on my map? Okay, like when something is awry, right? It's a way for us to check in. Where am I on my map? All right, what did this experience or this moment of stress or this moment of non-stress, where is it placing me on my map? And Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory, and then Deb Dana, is his kind of main colleague, and now who does most of the teaching in this realm and kind of has shepherded the work forward into not just, like academic and clinical forms. His phrase that he developed, it's a word he actually named, is neuroception. Okay, like this is, can I be aware of my nervous system? Okay, neuroception, right? That's what we're practicing, right? And this is like a key component of polyvagal theory, developing neuroception. Okay, and an invitation to notice and like map ourselves, find where we are on the map, is essentially that. It's practicing neuroception. And so you may just, a way to do that is like notice a name, like, oh, there I am in fear. Okay, I'm noticing I'm in fear. All right. And like, where do I feel that in my body? Oh, I feel that like tightness in my chest or more saliva in my mouth. Okay. I just am bringing my attention to it. I'm turning toward that sensation, all right, rather than avoiding or moving away from it, right? And this doesn't have to take a long time. Um, so I notice and name it, I turn toward it, I find where is it in my body, and then can I bring a little curiosity to it or a little compassion? And Deb Dana, I actually came back across this note and I love it. Okay. She's like, then you can spend a little time, but she says very little, all right, like 5 to 20 seconds little time listening to the story from that state. Okay. Because the story is really different than the state. Okay. So the state is my nervous system. It's those feelings, those sensations, the saliva, the tightness in my chest. The story has a lot more going on. So she says 5 to 20 seconds, attuning to like, oh, let me bring some curiosity to the story. And then I'm going to come back home. I'm going to reorient to my grounding plant, my friend, my journal, my nourishing tea, whatever it is, I'm going to come back to something else, right? So it's just an opportunity. That's our neuroception. Or I'm going to come back to work. I mean, whatever I've got to do. Maybe I've got to go back to tying the kids' shoes, right? It's a process of noticing and naming, observing where, bringing a little curiosity to it, and then peeking at the story, because the state will like move through, right? The story is what kind of lingers the experience. Okay, and then I just want to just offer you, I'm going to give you, this is homework. We're not going to do this right now because I want to just open up the space to hear any other voices. But your homework, your own work, your soul work, is to consider, all right, what are your ventral vagal anchors? Okay, so what are the anchors in your life? Who, what, when, where, that bring about that feeling of safety, all right, that bring about that capacity to connect, all right? So I'm just going to write this in the chat. What are my ventral vagal anchors? Who, what, when, where, all right? So the who are the people. I would start with actually people and pets and then go to like guides and ancestors. All right, let's have some people that are in like the flesh right now. All right. So who helps me feel this? What? Actually, shout out to Monica. All right, I'm just gonna say I was looking back at my notes from a year and a half ago, and Monica is part of my who. All right. Ventral vagal anchor, all right? Who, what, all right? Like what am I doing? What things? Where do I feel it and when? All right, so that's some homework, just self-exploration. Oh, Monty's here. Okay, so just a few minutes, all right, 5 minutes left or so, but I would love to just open up this space. There's probably really only time for um, one or two feedbacks or observations or a question. Yeah, you can just unmute yourself. I see you, Michelle Solitar.
That's me, thanks. Always,
Yeah.
always have a question. Thank you so much. This is really very enlightening and really fascinating. I really love this topic. Um, and I put this in the chat, and I know you weren't looking at the chat, but you said before we got to the mapping, a few minutes before we got to the mapping, you said in moments when action couldn't be taken. Unfortunately, I didn't write the context down, but my
Yeah.
question about that was such as what would those moments be? Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, like kind of the classic examples of that are in the field and study of trauma. Okay, so let's say I'm trapped. Ugh, I'm out in the woods on a bike ride and a tree falls on me and I can't, I'm trapped. All right. So that's like, I can't do anything, right? Like I'm going to start in sympathetic response, but eventually no action can be taken, right? Unless someone comes to my rescue, right? So that is like and then I'm going to go eventually into dorsal to preserve energy, right? My body is going to go into preservation as long as possible. It's going to stop freaking out essentially, and then like shut down to preserve myself. Okay. Um, but we could also think of anxiety and depression. Okay. And anxiety is often this like call to action, like something needs to change. I need to do something. And if I'm not taking effort to like change the relationship, the job, the habits, eventually something else may or may not kick in, right? And then I haven't taken action and now I'm in despair. All right. Now I'm stuck. Or I feel stuck. All right. So this is not that literal like trauma response stuck that I in the first example, but more of a kind of like psychological, response to that. That I didn't respond to the call to action. All right. I hope that is helpful.
Yes, yes, very much so. Thank you so
Hmm.
much.
Yeah. Oh, I never changed my name. I am Fanny, not Heartland.
Hi, Fanny. I have a
Yeah.
question. Thank you so much. This has been
Yeah.
really, really wonderful. I appreciated at the beginning that you talked a little bit about these aren't bad states of being. Like, it's not like we need to judge ourselves because we're
Hmm.
in any of them. And yet, I wonder, like, I don't want to be in those states, right? Especially the dorsal and the freeze, which I can go to quite often. It's my trauma response. And so when we find ourselves and we notice we're there, do you have any strategies? I mean, I guess that's what the OM, I love that too, the OM work. I'd never heard that before.
Mhm.
So I suppose that's what the OM work is addressing, but I wondered if you could say anything else
Well,
about that.
yeah, the OM work helps us to some degree, but thank you for actually bringing this up because this was something I wanted to name. All right, our strategies are always different. Um, there's for individuals, all right, but here's one tricky part about this because on that, again, that kind of ladder, if I'm in shutdown or immobilized, in order to get to ventral or that more regulated connected state, I actually have to move through some sympathetic activation. Okay. So if I'm in shutdown, that requires, I'm not going to just bypass sympathetic. I've got to move into action in some way, shape, or form. So, however small, right? I just even thinking right now, like a walk, a dance, like something that gets me off the go square, right? Like I just take an action, right? Something. So we do, that is a tricky part that if we get down into that total like faith and hope are really gone, right? Or I'm in isolation mode. I'm not going to actually be able to access the ventral vagal unless I move a little bit through parasympathetic. or excuse me, sympathetic. And so again, that can look different for a lot of people. I actually have this great play therapy exploration of this, and they're mostly like kid tools, but they apply for everyone. So it's like, you know, get up and dance, hop around, or if you're in sympathetic and needing to kind of, you know, it's like wrap a blanket or squeeze, you know, a teddy bear really tight, right? I mean, all these like we're like, often it's like proprioception input, right? That like it's usually something to do, right? With our bodies. Humming is a great one. Singing. So yeah, but the homework is there for us to understand, yeah, some of those ventral vagal spaces, but just, it's really helpful to know that, oh, I actually need action if I'm all the way down here. I need action first. Yeah. Okay. And maybe one more. I know we're at time, but I'll take another question or so if anyone has one. Thanks for just popping in with the questions too, because I can't see any hand raising or anything.
I just have a quick comment in that I'm so glad that you really emphasized the peeking at the story and not getting stuck into it, because I think that that is something that I've sort of tricked myself into in some ways of like, oh, I really need to understand the story so I can move through it, and not even realize that I can get like stuck back in that kind of old state. So I'm really, really glad you said peeking. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 5 to 20 seconds we give ourselves to look at the story. And as you say that, what it's actually making me think of, Angel, is that 80-20 thing, right? It's 80% of the information we can actually get from right here. And yet we think so much of it is up here, right? So if we can turn to all that, that actually there's maybe a little more for us to work with. Like, oh, okay, what I need right now actually is to like get outside, or you know, I can respond to something more visceral than the loop. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for naming that. This was fun. And I'm happy to stay on a couple more minutes. I'm going to close our formal time just to honor the boundary of time. So I just wish all of you well. And thank you for being here. Those of you that are listening to the recording later on, thank you for being a part of this circle too. I'll name a couple things coming up. My friend Dana Keaton and I are doing a glimmer event, like a live action mandala, live action, like a mandala happening. And so all funds, it is a paid event, but everything that comes in, we're donating to a local nonprofit, Immigrant Welcome Committee of Johnson County, and would love to see some of you there. It's Saturday the 19th, but it is a limited capacity, right? So that's happening, and you can check that out both on the Tend Her Glimmer page as well as my website, which is just my name, fanniehungerford.com. I've got a few retreats coming up this year, as well as a yoga nidra and meditation training in the fall. All right, so thank you all so much. I'm gonna stop the recording. Or actually, maybe I'll just leave it on, because if there are questions, maybe they'll be helpful to other people. So I'll stay another 5 minutes or so. Even if you just want to share or say hi.
Hi, can you just share the details of the event on the 19th, what it is, how much it is, where it is?
Yeah, it's $12. And you sign up on my website, which is fanniehungerford.com. Actually, maybe you can't sign up. I think you have to sign up. You got to go to the Tend Her Glimmer event page to find it, because it's like a hidden page on my website. You won't find it. So if you go to the Tend Her Glimmer events, you'll find it there. It's in Hickory Hill in Iowa City, the upper entrance to Hickory Hill. And my colleague and friend Dana that I'm doing it with, like really like loves mandalas and is an art therapist and is super cool human. So $12, money is going to the nonprofit. And we have some sponsorship from Tinter, which is allowing us to procure all the materials. So it'll be like a collaborative, creative, experiential, hope building activity. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi, Krista. All right. Oh, thanks, Betsy, for putting in that link. Yeah, great. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we roll out? Well, blessings to all. Thank you so much, Betsy, and the whole Tender team. This is always a gift. So thanks for tuning in and caring for yourselves and each other.
And Fannie, by the way, Fannie's going to be back in 2 weeks from tonight doing a yoga nidra to kind of like integrate everything we've done. So come back with her 2 weeks from tonight.
In your comfies and cozies.
In your comfies. Yeah.
All right. Bye.